This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
It's been over 20 years since legendary comedian Bob Hope died in July of 2003, but he's about to have a resurgence via YouTube with the Bob Hope official YouTube channel. Joining us to talk about it is Jim Hardy, who is the archivist at Bob Hope Enterprises. He joins us via Zoom from California. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Peter. Glad to be on your show here this morning.
Thanks for being on the program with us. As I said to you just off air before, that I was a big fan of Bob Hope growing up and watched and enjoyed a lot of the stuff that he did. It's been 20 years since he passed away. Why so long to get a YouTube channel in the first place?
Well, to be honest, Peter, we're probably not the most technologically advanced outfit in the nation. So we're a little behind the curve, I suppose, but there are numerous YouTube channels that I have started to watch for my own interest and benefit, and we were approached by an outfit called Spotted Dog, and this is kind of what they do. They hit us with the idea, and we thought, well, heck yeah, why not? I mean, we've got a lot of great material that haven't been seen in a very long time, if at all, since it was first on. So yeah, let's get it out there and try and get some new eyeballs on Bob and remind everybody who he was and why he was important.
The one thing about Bob's career is that he had such a long and successful career that he encompassed basically every form of communications that was available to him at the time. He was in radio, he was on stage, he was in television, he was in movies. So you knew him. What would he think about reaching to a new medium like social media and YouTube?
Oh, I think that he would be very, very excited about it. Some years ago, if you remember, when Amazon.com first started out, Peter, all they did is sell books. That's going back an awful long time. And we set up an online book signing, and he would talk to people through the internet, and they would see him, with a camera, and he would talk to them, and then he would sign a book for them that Amazon would then ship to them. And that was sort of his first and our first foray into this new technology. This is an awful long time ago. And he thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. So he would be very excited that we're doing this and able to do it. And if he were around today, you'd be talking to him with great pleasure. He would be all up for this.
There's so much stuff that Bob did through the course of the years, and you are the archivist. So I'm just wondering, how do you sift through what you're going to be putting up on the official Bob Hope YouTube channel?
Well, I have the unique benefit, Peter, of having been here for 38 years already. So you sort of acquire the knowledge of it over time as we were doing shows, and we would do retrospective shows and go through the old shows and pick out the best and the most interesting and the best performances and so forth. So, I've had a long time to acquire this knowledge. If somebody was coming in today and had to catch up, I wouldn't envy them.
So what are some of the highlights that one can see on the channel?
Oh, my goodness. Well, great comedy, first of all. He was a comedian first and foremost. So, we've got one of my favorite monologues up there, about when Elvis joins the Army, which is just 5 minutes of just gold. It's just funny. Monologues about the writer's strikes. He was so topical that whatever was happening at the time, he would comment on it. He would do jokes about it. And he was never mean-spirited. And, he was always respectful. If he was talking about presidents or dignitaries or whatever. But, he gave everybody, he was an equal opportunity commenter. The other thing about his shows, Peter, is that he always had the biggest stars of the time. And we have great performances. We have the Jackson 5, when Michael Jackson had just turned 15. Barbra Streisand, from 1963, when she was just getting a little traction. We got a great John Denver clip up there. He just had Frank Sinatra's first television appearance was on Bob's show in 1950. So, not only are you getting Bob, you're getting all of the people that he had on the show that he worked with, that he did comedy with, and a lot of them weren't comedians, and would do sketches and do paddle with them, and they turned out to be quite funny on their own. So it's just a wealth of content, and Bob is honestly just the tip of the iceberg. We have so many great performers and performances that we're going to be able to put up there for people to see. And a lot of it, Peter, hasn't been seen since it was on the air the first time.
One of the things that Bob was well known for was his USO tours. I would assume that that is also part of the YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They were amongst the most popular shows that he ever put out. And some of the Vietnam shows still rank in the top 20. And this is, they're up there with Super Bowl. These are Super Bowl numbers. And these are shows that were on 50 years ago. And they still rank in the top 20 ratings wise. They were immensely popular. His USO tours and broadcasts were probably the single most important thing that he did.
What are some of the oldest clips and stuff that's on the YouTube channel?
Well, what we will be putting up at some point, it's not on there yet, but we have footage, Peter, that goes all the way back to when Bob was in vaudeville. His brother traveled with him, had a little movie camera, and took a lot of film footage from the wings, from the balcony, and we'll be putting some of that up there. That's as far back as it goes. That's from the 20s. We have some footage of him on Broadway in the early 30s. There's not a lot of footage from radio, but we do have some coverage of him on radio. We have film of him during World War II when he entertained troops over there in the early 40s. We have 1,000 hours of content, and we're not putting it all up at once. That would be overwhelming, but we're putting things up 2 or 3 times a week. There's always something new to see, and that library of content is just going to grow and grow and grow. So people keep coming, they come back, and they're always going to see new stuff, and they'll be able to see everything we've already put up. So we've got a great deal of work ahead of us.
You just brought up an interesting point. I grew up at the tail end of the baby boom. And so my generation would sometimes look at Bob Hope as seeing someone who was somewhat old-fashioned, as funny as he might have been. But the thing I find very interesting in what you just said is Bob was always on the cutting edge of technology. And the fact that you said his brother took film with a movie camera back in vaudeville, no one was doing that.
No, I don't think so. It's very difficult to find film footage of vaudeville of any kind. And, that he had the foresight or arrogance, maybe, to film it. He didn't know if he was going to be a hit or not, And it's really cool to see not only Bob, but to see some of the, they filmed some of the other acts he was with. And, contortionists and magicians and animal acts and all the stuff that was incumbent upon a successful vaudeville lineup. You're seeing all of this. But most interesting for us to see Bob when he was really starting out, and he was not an overnight success. Peter, he was very close to quitting show business and going back to Cleveland and getting a job as a butcher.
And when I say he was technologically advanced, he got into radio at a time, at the very beginning of it, when a lot of people on stage didn't want to be part of radio. And in television, there are a lot of people who didn't want to be in television, and he got in on literally day one. Yeah,
he was intrigued by, the new mediums. He was very ambitious, very energetic. He tells the story when he first went on radio. In vaudeville, you could do the same show for a year because you just traveled from circuit to circuit and then went around the whole country. And he got on radio and he realized after the show that everybody had heard the show and he needs a new show in 7 days. And, so the energy and the commitment and the effort to create a new 30 minutes every week, he loved it. And that's when he got writers in and he got young kids out of college that were fresh and energetic and bright. And, it was a match made in heaven because those radio shows are, they still hold up today. You might need a glossary here and there to, understand some of the political references or cultural references, but generally that humor hasn't changed. As I mentioned in the introduction, even though it's been 20 years, over 20 years since Bob has passed away, his legacy not only lives on with the work he did on screen and on the air, but his legacy also lives on with his philanthropic adventures as well. Yes, it does. The foundation does a lot of great work. He has been quoted as saying, if you don't have charity in your heart, you have the worst kind of heart trouble. He was always a very philanthropic. He gave tremendous amounts of money and really more importantly, time. Because when he gave his time to appear for benefits, that would raise far more money than a check that he could write. And a lot of performers, they were very generous and they did write checks, but he gave time. And his foundation does a great deal of work for feeding, clothing, sheltering the poor, and an awful lot of work for veterans, which are very near and dear to his heart for obvious reasons. And a lot of our veterans are at risk, and the foundation is very, very involved in helping these men and women out.
For those of us who grew up watching Bob or listening to Bob, there are warm memories from all of us who are fans of his. But what about those who never got a chance to see Bob while he was alive, the younger generation who weren't around a little over 20 years ago when he passed away? Do you think they will get a chance to enjoy the work of Bob Hope as well?
I think they will if they make the effort. They have to now go and find it. I mean, we can put it up there, and we are. And this is really one of the great hopes from doing this, is that younger audiences will discover who he was. They'll find his humor. It's still funny because he comments on things that we all have, a frame of reference to, air travel and whatever it is, food, domestic situations and so forth. Comedy is comedy. Everybody who watches stand-up comedians today, and everybody does, stand-up comedy was not a thing in the old days. Bob created stand-up comedy. There would be people that would come on like a Will Rogers and tell folksy tales and so forth. But to stand up alone on a stage and tell jokes to an audience, that wasn't something that existed. And Bob made that. And, so stand-up comedy is a huge thing now, but he created it. And I think that they will find it very interesting to see, the roots of it and the timing that he had. A lot of stand-up comedians today will still reference Bob as being a source of timing that they would try to learn from and to mimic. He had impeccable timing. It was natural for him. So I really hope that all audiences, but younger audiences as well, will go on to YouTube, search Bob Hope, and find this material. And I think they're going to be really, really pleasantly surprised at what they find. And he had such a great stage presence, and his rapport with the audience, that guys like Carson, later on, years later, would mimic. He would engage the audience in his jokes and break that fourth wall. So, really groundbreaking stuff.
Well, it's a fascinating idea. Again, it is the Bob Hope official YouTube channel. And Jim, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Peter, very happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
Jim Hardy, the archivist at Bob Hope Enterprises. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0771, and you'll find links to the website at Bob Hope Enterprises. Plus, you'll also find the link to the new Bob Hope official YouTube channel.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuph is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.